Okay, good. All right, so we're getting started with this Mariachi Cactus, and the very first thing we need to do is we need to create a project space. You can just work willy-nilly in a file, but creating a project window keeps everything together when it comes to file paths, so that when you are working from different computers or different drives, the file path can influence your references. And if you were just to start on a naked file here and import a reference, and then you open this file at home, that image has a different file path than your computer at home because we haven't created a workspace for everything to dwell in, and your image won't be there. It'll say it's there, but you won't actually see it. So how can we do this in a professional way? We're going to create a project. So up here under File, I'm just going to go down here to Project Window towards the bottom and select that, and then this window will pop up. Current project is automatically set to default, and the location is under the users thing, and we don't want that. We want to save to either the D drive or the Google Drive. Me personally, I'm saving to the Google Drive. I do pay for extra space, but it just keeps everything together. And if I need to back it up, from time to time I have hard drives and external hard drives on my desktop at home that I back things up on, just in case, you know, the worst happens, and bad things happen to good people, right? So let's create a new current project. So we're just going to come over here to New, and we're going to call this let's see, I'll just capitalize Mariachi Cactus. So we're naming the folder that all this is going to go in. And now we need to give that a location. So you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it that, and I'm going to click on this folder. And if you want to find where you're going to save this, I'm saving mine on the Google Drive, and I already have a little shortcut here, so I'll just... I already have a file there called this. Let me see what's in here. Yeah, see, I've already done this. So let me find a different place just so it's not so confusing. I'll do it here. All right, so I'm just going to create a folder, and this will be where it's going to live. So I select that. So now you can see the location is G drive, my drive, UAH, and this class. If you're saving to the D drive, that's fine, but it should look something like that. You have a new location. And these are the folders that are going to be created automatically within our project folder, Mariachi Cactus. Scenes is where all of our maya.mb files are. That's these files with our actual work in it. Assets is a place where I will save things like FBXs and OBJs, things that I export or import into the scene. Images typically is where I will save any renders that I do. And source images is where our textures will go and our reference images will go. And that's very, very important to remember for your reference images. And the rest of this stuff just doesn't really apply right now, but it comes in handy down the road for other things. All right, so we've got all that. I'm just going to hit accept. And let's go ahead and save this file for the first time. This will be our first one, so I'm just going to go File, Save Scene. And then you can see right away, because we've created this project window, it automatically sets the project, so it's already in the Scenes folder. And if I just bounce up one level, you can see here, here's all the folders that we just made that's inside this Mariachi Cactus. Right? So in the Scenes folder, I'm just going to create the first thing here. I'll just call it Mariachi Cactus, and I'll just leave it at that for now. Save as, and now we can see that that's there. And if I open up this here, let's see here, 3, 2, 1, here's my Mariachi Cactus folder, here's the scenes, and there's our file that we just saved. All right, so the next thing that we need to do is we need to get this image. So let's go ahead and right click on the cactus and save image as. Hello. All right, so we're going to go to where your folder is, your project, and I'm going to save this PNG in source images. 3D Paint Textures is where our textures will go once we get into Substance Painter, but for now I just need a reference folder, so I'm going to create a new folder and I'm going to call it References. Just staying organized for the future. Projects get big and before you know it you've got just tons of stuff, so let's just keep it good habits starting from the beginning here. Alright, so I'm going to open that References folder and I'm going to save this image there. Okay, we're done with that, done with that. So now just like the other, like the baseball bat or any other references that we've worked from, we need to pick a view to put this in. I think I'm going to choose this front view here. So spacebar, front, and I'm going to come up here to our Connect 4 image plane import button here. So let's click that. And then we're still in our project. This is the beauty of setting your project. Everything is right there. You don't have to keep digging in. And I'm going to go into my reference folder. There's our happy guy. And import that in. So just to review some things with this, if I create a cube, and I'm just going to click off the picture and click back on again, and I'm just going to raise this up. Doesn't need to be exact, but I'm just going to kind of eyeball it this time. I've got my image in, and if you remember, each one of these squares is a square centimeter. Centimeter is the default measurement for Maya, and you can change that in the settings. But typically, I'll just keep it there, and say if I'm modeling a 6-foot character, I just will model to scale whatever 6 feet is in centimeters. When you are modeling actual people and animals and things like that, you typically do want to model to scale. Unless, in this case, say this would just be something we slap on our dash in our car maybe or something like that, you know, so it could probably be like just 6 or 7 inches tall. So I'll scale it up a little bit here, just because when you're working really small or really big, you will start to run into clipping planes with the cameras. And what that means is, if I get really close to this, at a certain point, the camera is going to start to clip into the image. And I don't even know if I can do this right now, but you can see as I get closer, there, see that? That clipping plane starts to cut into the image. And if I'm in here working on details and I need to get real close, I don't want to deal with that. So scaling up helps us to avoid that. So I'm just going to scale this little square up just as a reference point. Now the other thing that's important to remember is this image here is just right in our way. We're going to be in and out of here. We don't want to mess with this thing. So I'm just going to move it back. And I'm moving it away from the front camera so that this cube is in between the image and the camera. And just to demonstrate that, if I hit spacebar, change this back to front. So I've got my front view. If you ever lose this view in the front, you can go to Panels, Orthographic, and just change it back to front. So I've got my front camera and my perspective camera. And you can see, once again, just like before, I'm moving this back because there's perspective in this perspective camera. There is no perspective in this front camera. The way that the focal length is that no matter how far back I move this, it doesn't change the size of the image. But if I move it on the other side of the cube, you can see in the bottom left there in my front view how that cube pops in front of and behind. You want to make sure this is behind. So I just move that back a little, and you can choose to keep this photo reference in your perspective view, or we can hide it. And I like to hide it, so I'm going to just over here, I'm on the Attributes Editor, and I'm going to click Looking Through Camera, and it's front. I could change that, but I'm just going to leave it in front. So now I only see this image here. And just as one more thing to clean this up, I'm going to hit spacebar in my front camera to open up this in my viewport. And if you're working here, you might find that you're going to be marquee selecting and doing things, and you might accidentally grab this image. So like I've shown you before, we're just going to lock this image down, so that's not a problem for us anymore. So if I go down here to modeling toolkit, no, it's channel, box, and layer editor. I'm going to select this image plane, and I'm going to come down here under the display tab where the layers live, and this little square with a circle on it, I'm going to select that. This will create a new layer with the objects I have selected. So just the image is selected, and I'll just name this by double clicking on layer 1, and I'm just going to call it references and save it. And now here we have these 3 boxes here. The V just turns it on and off, where you can get rid of it if you want. And this farther one here, if we change it to R, restricted, we cannot select this image. The only way we can select it is over here in the outliner where the image plane is. And then we could move it if we wanted to. So now we've got this all set up. Because bad things happen to good people, let's go ahead and save our progress so far. We're going to do an increment and save. So if you did everything that you were supposed to do creating a project window, we're going to come over here to File, and we're going to go Increment and Save. And now you can see here it's added the next iteration 0001. So we can go all the way to 1000 if we want. And hopefully we don't have to do that. Alright, so just to see what that looks like here in our project window, if I open Scenes, this is our latest and greatest. Alright, so let's start modeling this thing. We already have the sombrero. I'm just going to turn that off because we'll come to that later. Because we can already see, like, this one's a little different. It's got a higher wall and more of a point in the back here, but the rest is up to us. Matter of fact, a lot of this is up to us because we only have this front view, so we're going to be interpolating, as the Army likes to say, a lot of this information. I don't even know if that's a real word, but they use it. So let's just kind of figure out how we're going to tackle this base. And I would like to give you guys the opportunity to try and do that on your own first. So let's do that so I'm not talking this whole time, and then we'll tackle it together a little bit, and that way it's a good excuse for us to listen to more Skyrim music. Sound like a deal? Alright, go ahead and get started on this. Just make this vase. Choose your battles.
Thank you for not making us listen to Mariachi music.
I don't know when the right day is for that, but it's not today. Cactus, but we're going to be thinking down the road about geometry necessary for the eyes and the mouth, and we'll go over that together. Right now, we're just blocking out these basic forms. So bounce back and forth. say I want this to be a soft edge. I can shift right click and go here to soft and hard edges, and I can soften that edge. And now that is a soft edge for that. This one I kind of need to be a little harder because it's really a shape that's still really edgy. So I want those to be right soft. Basically, it's going to be soft. So let's see what we got here. We went after the pot, and this is what I've got. I kind of did it the same way I did the sombrero. Again, I just started with a cube. Scale it up. And just get rid of this top face this time. And I can see if I smooth it, I've got like a little thimble thing going on. So I've got to add something at this point. I just don't have enough. So I'm going to add this wider part because the vase had that wider part towards the top. And let's just bring in, I'm going to grab these verts and scale those down. And then I can grab these top ones and do the same. Smooth mesh preview, still not right. Just got to make this a little wider and move it up. Check back on my shape here. And I know I've got this kind of rounded lip up here. So I'll just go ahead and extrude that. And you know, you remember this, it defaults to the object mode. If I want to just pull this thing straight up, even if I do the, it kind of goes up, but see how it's kind of flaring out? Maybe I don't want that. I can just click this little circle, and now I'm at the world, and I can pull it straight up. Alright. And then to make that lip, this isn't the end-all be-all, this is just the way that I'm already doing some different than I did before. I'm going to extrude this out. But I don't want this top row of faces yet. Alright, so let's just see what I got there. Alright, so I'm working on that. It needs a base. So maybe this time I'll just extrude this bottom one out. Pull that straight down. And then I'll grab these faces and extrude them out. This time I'm just going to hold control, thickness, and just move that out. Or I could exit the tool and just use the scaling tool since I've got the extrusion there. Okay. So I'm getting into the land of bevels here pretty soon. But before I do, I'm just going to kind of double check everything, right? Just kind of, maybe I want to tweak some stuff, make this a little wider. And if I want to move this edge up, say for example, I could Control Shift and slide up, but that doesn't want to do that. So, and that's probably because it was part of that extrusion, and it's holding all that together, so I can't run that up. So maybe if I just drop another one in there, this one I can slide up by holding Control and Shift, and it doesn't change the shape. But let's see what that looks like here. It kind of helps that flare a little bit more. And then if I wanted to, I could scale this in to kind of just give it a little bit more of a curve, or just pull it straight up without. And you can see how that little subtle things, using different things, changes the shape as a whole. Alright, so I'm going to think about bevels now. I'm just going to add one here and here, and let's just add a bevel and see right away what happens. Okay. I mean, that can work. I could play with that. If I wanted to add this chamfer, you can see how that changes things a little bit. Maybe that's a little too harsh and I just want to add a segment, and that's a same but a little different. Or nothing at all. Just leave that there. But see how this bevel is worked out here? I'm just going to go ahead and Control Z back out of that. Something is going on here and I don't like it. I'll check that edge. Maybe that's not the edge I should bevel there. So I'm just going to do this one first, and I'll do them separately so things work out a little better. There we go. I like that a little better. And then this one down here, I'll bevel that one separately. and I'm not mad at that. I could play around with this and tweak it. Alright. So now, let's just say I'm satisfied. Which I'm never satisfied, so maybe I'm just going to grab these. Make sure I don't have any of the bottom ones there. And just pull all this up so I have a little bit more of a lip around the base. There we go. Alright, so I've got this thing. I'm going to delete my history that's piled up. And center this. And I'm going to extrude this. Shift right click, extrude. And I'm just going to hold control and run thickness on it. And there's that little lip again. I don't like that. Control Z out of that. Let's see what we got. Maybe I've got another edge here. I do. So that'll happen sometimes. What I can do to get rid of that is I can just go to vertex mode. I'm going to select all of these, just in case you ever end up having two edges on top of each other. And I can just merge all those together. Shift right click, merge verts. There we go. So now I should be able to extrude this without any issues. I can go inside as well. Just reverse those faces under mesh display, reverse, if that ever happens to you. And now I've got a solid vase inside and out. But maybe I don't like the inside of this. That's okay. I can grab these faces and just kind of pull them in a little bit like that. And that'll just kind of thicken it up a little bit. Maybe I don't need this edge. Control delete that. So see, I've already made this a little different than I made the other one. And just double check this again. You know, you can see similar ways, but just different things. Just different things done. So I'm going to check my front view. If I move this over, this is how I just kind of saw it with my eye, and yours might be different. I've got this perspective here looking at the pot, but I'm modeling in an orthographic view, so I'm just trying to think, looking at this head on, just kind of gauge it as close as I can. And you can see I'm far from perfect. I could probably, you know, make this a little smaller so that things are a little more aligned to the edge, but it doesn't have to be exact. We're after the spirit of this thing because we just can't really know what's curving at us and what's curving away. So I'm just going to stick with what I got. Close enough. Alright, so we've got that. Got this pot. Let's go after, the next thing we should probably do is go after the main body here. I think that's what I'm going to go after. I'm just going to call this pot 2 and hide it. I don't feel like deleting it. Maybe I'll like that one better down the road. And then over here in my outliner, I'm just going to call this pot. Okay, so next let's go after the body here. I'm going to start with a cube on the body, and I don't really have anything I need to delete off of it as far as faces because it's not like an open object. I will say this, when you get around to doing the guitar and you're thinking about this hole in the middle, think about modeling things like a plane, you know, like before, and that might help you with how that goes. But for now, let's just kind of stick with this cactus and go after that. So just give you a few minutes, try and work on it on your own, just see where you go, and then I'll do it with you afterwards. are looking good around the room. I'm just going to go ahead and cover how, I would go about it. And if you did something different, don't worry about it. We're just going to learn. Again, if this pot's in my way, I can just hide it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with this cube. And just like the baseball bat, I'm just going to kind of get the overall height of this. And you can scale it. I'm just going to grab these top verts. And I'm marquee selecting because in an orthographic view, if you remember, there's two verts behind these. So if I were just to grab this one and grab that one and then move them around, you can see the other two. That's the back side of that cube. So I want to marquee select these things if I'm going to do this, and I'm just going to pull this all the way up here. Now my center is still down here with the original cube, and if I center pivot, then it's in the middle. Not really a big deal right now, but let's see here. So I think I'm going to kind of just to get the bend in here. Drop an edge loop in, and I'll grab these verts, scale them up a little bit more, just these even more. Pull this over, pull that down. And I know, typically, if I pull these things out to the edge of where I think it's going to be, and then I run Smooth Mesh Preview, you can see that it's always just a little smaller because those hard edges will collapse. So it's important to kind of bounce back and forth. And I'll just pull that down into the pot. Bend that over this way. A little bit more and scale it up. Like that. And if I bounce back, you can see it just looks like a hot mess right now, but that's all right. Okay, so I'm just going to get some X-ray here, just to kind of look through. And it does look like this is all open to interpretation, but I'll just kind of eyeball it right about there.
Wait, how do you do the X-ray?
That's this button right here on the top of the viewport. These two squares, if you just hover over it, it says X-ray, and that way you can kind of look through the shape you're working with. And maybe I'll play around with this edge here. I've just kind of grabbed this edge that's going around the waist, and I'm going to Control Shift to slide up and down just to kind of see. And I don't really like that, so I'm just going to go straight up, move over, and every once in a while, let's see here, move that way. Every once in a while, I'll just kind of pop into my perspective view to see how things are going. And I can tell, I can look at the front either by the axis indicator down the bottom left, but also remember I've got my cube here in the front, so I can kind of look and see how things are going. And I think I'm on the right track. And that's all I got. So I can add more geometry. I'm going to need to if I want to put these arms out, right? So let's talk about the arms. Here in the front, we're just blocking out these main shapes. If we're going to do these arms, we need more geometry, but I want things to flow a little better. So because this arm, the right arm, is a little higher than his left because of the tilt of his torso, if you want to call it that. So maybe I'll just kind of play around with the idea of raising these verts up a little bit and tilting these down to kind of follow that curve a little better. Because you can see down here, I actually need another edge loop, to be honest with you, because you can see here this is much thicker in my shape towards the base. I can see his lower half down here that disappears into the pot, and then the edge of my shape. So I'm just going to drop another edge loop right about here. And now it's getting just a little too boomerangy. Just that one edge loop added things that I gotta fix. So I'm gonna grab these verts and just kind of pull them around a little bit. And what I'd like to do is I want to position this edge loop here that I've dropped below where that arm is going to go into, like the socket, because I'm going to need a face to extrude to get that arm, because the arms and the body are all going to be one piece. So I'm just tweaking little things. I'll check myself out here. A little scary looking, so I'm just going to go right back. Pull this way. And if you'll notice, I haven't added, even though it's tempting to want to add more geometry, right? To come in here and do this, add one here, and then there. But I don't want to do that yet, because this is all still just a cube that I've messed around with. And dropping those in, for one, it will square it up. And that is, let me tell you, that is the #1 thing I see throughout the course is round things tend to look square. And I want to try and kind of get there together so we can tackle those things. So I'm just going to keep tweaking what I have until I just can't do anymore. Eventually I'm just going to need more cowbell on this thing, right? So it's just kind of got to happen. But I resist the urge to add it because I don't want to have to move around more than I need to right now. So I'll just bring that down a little bit. I love working on things that are open to interpretation. I like that freedom. There's a place for working on things in an exact way, and that can be liberating too, because of the satisfaction you get from being very accurate. Okay. But in this case, it's just a little cactus man playing his guitar. Lives in a jar. That rhymed. Unintentional. Let's see. Front view. Okay, so I'm going to start thinking about this socket. But before I do, let me show you what happens when I add those edge loops in. So you don't have to do this, but you can see right now everything is very fluid and round and pretty even because I've been moving everything together. Even this top, you can see that's still a square. I haven't changed anything. But if I come in here and add an edge loop at the 50%, holding Control and Shift, let's just see how that changes things. Exit the tool W, and now you can see, now it's kind of flattened out his sides. Same thing if I do 50% on the other side. Now, look at that square. Now, if this is the way you went, that's no worries. We can grab these. Well, actually, we could do this. We can grab these outside edges. There'll be some cleanup to do, but if you find yourself in this and you're just kind of like, well, I want them there, I'm going to go to the scaling tool, and basically all I have is just all the outside corners of this cube. And I'm just going to pull them in a little bit. And you can see I'm starting to get back to that rounded shape. And if we look down, you can see why. Hello? This is rounding out that form instead of having those sharp corners. So if you find yourself in that, it's not over. But honestly, I just don't want to drop those in yet. So let's check and make sure I didn't go back too far. Okay, let's talk about these arms. I'm going to need to think about things like where the arms go, where this mouth is going to go, things like that. But we are going to keep this as simple as possible. So let's just go ahead and commit to something. Nothing's going to happen if we do nothing, right? So let me just drop, before I do, I'm going to move this edge lower. Control Shift Slide. Just a little bit lower, give myself some more room. And then multi-cut, I'll just add something here. And now, if I move that back up, it could work out. Let's just see what happens. Alright, so I'm looking at this, and I need to extrude that arm, so it looks like it's going to be this face right here. So I'll go to my perspective view just so I can see that. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go extrude, but you can see in Smooth Mesh Preview, the extrude is already there. If I bounce out here, it doesn't look like anything's happened, but the extrude has already happened. So I need to kind of figure out how this is going to work. I'm going to pull this in and just run this offset. Basically what I'm doing is I'm playing with this part. I'm not pulling anything out. So we'll just do that for now. And now I'm going to run another extrude and pull this arm out. So let's look here. Obviously, I need to move some stuff around, so I'm just gonna, number one, I'm gonna grab this edge and kind of clamp it down, make it a little bit more narrow. I'm gonna move it just somewhere up in the vicinity. Bless you. I'll marquee select some of these things just to try and keep my form. I don't want to lose it. I'm not too worried about what's going on up here because a lot of that's going to disappear into the sombrero, but we can still figure out these arms. Okay. So I am going to grab the end of the arm here and just tighten it up a little bit and try and position it somewhere around this bend. And this is where we just need to eyeball some stuff. So I'm going to bounce out of my reference and just, I need more. I'm going to grab this face and I'm going to extrude it again just to get a little bit more to work with. I know I have a bend, so I'll just work in this plane for now. So let me just bend this, and I'm just scaling on that face that I've made on this little thing here, and I got to create this bend. So let me back this part off. I'm gonna double click this edge loop and either Control Shift and Slide, grabbing that. You got to kind of think too, like, what does this look like in perspective view? I don't like having to bounce back too much back and forth. After a while, you just kind of get a sense of working in an orthographic view. But if you start to, you're like, did I do that right? Bounce back and then just see what you got. See, I've got more of a rectangle going on here. Let me just fix that. Pull that in like this. This can be tighter. And we're just trying to set ourselves up for really good edge flow. So I'll go ahead and extrude again. Just rotate this face, pull it up, check my front view. I think this could go this way. Not quite there yet. Alright, I'll extrude again. And And I'm just focusing on getting this bend in the right place. And maybe I'll just, for now, pull this up just to get the overall form there. Probably will need one there. And I'm just going to grab all these on this upper hand area and just expand them out. So now you can see I've got enough geometry, maybe even more than I need, but for now I'll just play around in this front view and just kind of position things where I want them to be. And I want them to be even, so sometimes I grab all of them all the way around. Sometimes I'm just grabbing these to kind of pull them out. There we go. Very satisfying to see the outline get filled for my reference, but again, remember, like, everybody's going to be a little different, and that's actually preferred. I like seeing the different ways that people do things. So I do have something though I've got to address. So right now he's showing us his bicep, looking good, hitting the gym, but this thing curls in front of him to hold this guitar. So I've got to do some things here. So let me just grab all 4 of these, and there's this really crazy tool called Soft Select. It lives over here. I'm just going to play with it. Under the modeling toolkit, I can hit Soft Select here, and I can either select this box or I can just hit B, and you'll see that the vertices I have selected, if I hit B, now all of these light up. So if I just kind of pan out here, if I hold B, left click and drag, I can affect the area affected. So it's kind of like having a drop-off effect, so that I'm actually controlling all these verts, but kind of I can control how much I affect the ones around it. So if I minimize this a little bit and I pull this forward, maybe a little bit more. See, that's just a little too much. And I can hit B to exit that tool to kind of grab more. So I think I'm just going to shift greater than symbol, grab all of these. And this is where things can get a little dicey. But I'm going to do something. Let me see, let me move this forward. If I want to move this whole arm so that it curves in front so that I can hold a guitar, I'm going to grab these verts and I'm going to change the pivot of this by using snapping. So I'm going to tap D and I'm going to hold down V to snap to a vert. Remember the magnet at the top? And I'm going to snap it to a place where I want to rotate from, which would be right about there. And I'm going to tap D again to exit that, and I'm going to hit E to rotate, and now I'm rotating around that vert that I snapped to. And I can also scale from that vert if I wanted to, but that's not really going to help me. But I can move from that. That's handy. I'll check my front view again. See, I'm still there because I've only really moved in one direction. I just need it to come out enough to hold that guitar. So the guitar is going to be going through there. And you can see I've stretched this out, so I'm going to have to kind of make some adjustments. So let me grab this edge, and I'll just control slide by grabbing this square here to control these 2 axes. That's the X and the Z. So control, shift slide, and I'll just slide this down to kind of even out my topology a little bit. Double check that front view. It's got to come down. All those little spikes, those will be separate objects that we make. Okay. That looks fine for now. And if I check my shape here, we can see that maybe this whole situation here, this square can come out a little bit so I don't have that kind of sharp overhang. Just kind of pull that out, see what that looks like. A little bit better. I don't have to get too wrapped around the axle on that stuff yet because we will eventually add more geometry and those things will change just a little bit. But we're just blocking things out. Bless you. So I'm going to revisit the front view here and just kind of recheck my form because things can get away from us. Just do a little cleanup. Move some verts around. I like to kind of step away and work on an area like that and then come back and then I'll just kind of see things that I didn't see before. Kind of like, you know, if you ever make music, you make something you're really proud of it, you're like, this is awesome, and then the next day, listen to it, you're like, the hell is this? You know, like, you're almost like fresh pair of eyes, you know, you just kind of get away from it a little bit. So I'll fix the bottom here. So just in that same way, I want you guys to go after this other arm. This one's even a little easier. But think about it the way that we did this one. Remember, I just got that 2D shape first. So you just got to get this kind of little swoop here, little guy, and it looks to me like, on mine anyway, I would use this face. I would extrude and offset off of that face and then pull that out as I needed, just like we did this thing. So go ahead and do that for a little while and I'll get our Skyrim music back on. this, and I'll just move this over. And just to kind of get us all caught up, a couple things before we have to go. So everything I'm seeing around the room is good. Normal stuff I see people running into, but for the most part, everyone is doing great. Don't forget to continue. It's all about bouncing around back and forth between front view and perspective, smooth mesh preview, and regular polygonal. And one good point that was brought up is that if you are here and you're like, man, this is looking great, I'm so proud of my stuff. Like, I have a lot of work to do on this arm still. Even though things line up in the front view, I still want things to be a little cleaner this way. So I will be playing around with that. And a good way to know if you're in a good way or not is if you bounce out of smooth mesh preview and things are really, really wonky here. Things should still look relatively sensical on the polygonal side of things. And you can see like that didn't really change a whole lot here, but the cleaner I remain here, the better my smooth mesh preview is going to be. So for instance, this whole edge loop here can just kind of be rotated around a little bit maybe. Same here, just to kind of work with the flow of things, maybe tighten it up there. And this might need to get moved back a little bit just to kind of make a little bit more sense because I've got this flow up the arm. And I do think I might have enough room for the neck, but I might end up having to move things forward a little bit. So I'll just kind of move that forward. And at some point you'll find yourself doing things where you're like, okay, my smooth mesh preview is looking like it's pretty well lined up. Both my views, perspective and front, they seem okay. You just start to get to the point where you're like, there's nothing more I can do here. Everything's clean and looking good, and it's on to the next step. So that's what you need to do. So if you get the body and the arms, you should be somewhere around this level of resolution. And you see even here, look, I got this vert just kind of poking out. Let me just see where that is. Smooth mesh preview. They say it looks fine there, but here it's just a little out there. So let me just see how things look. Yeah, maybe that needs to come out this way a little bit. Doesn't really change the view at all. But like I said, once you get to that point where you're like, I can't really do anything else, you are in a place where either you can interpret more freely what it is you're making, and you need to abandon this reference to do what you have to do. Or you need to move on to another shape, another form like the guitar, or it's time for more geometry, which we will need for the eyes and the mouth. But I want you to save the eyes and the mouth for, unless you're just hot shit and you're ready to go ahead and do that, but we'll cover that next class on Thursday. So continue blocking out these forms. No eyes, no mouth, but you can make the guitar. We've already made the sombrero. You can make the mustache. And the guitar and the mustache will be plenty to work on between now and then. So this is due. All right, have this due next class. So have this done before class starts on Thursday. And when I say done, I just mean those forms blocked out. Exactly what we've been doing. We'll add the details together on Thursday, but you should have the pot, the guitar, the body, and the hat all blocked out and looking like it's ready to go in a smooth mesh preview. And for those of you, anybody who hasn't submitted their sombrero from the challenge this morning, please go ahead and do that. And if people, again, if you're not here, you miss the assignment unless you have a valid reason like a doctor or, you know, some emergency or something like that. Those things can't be made up. So thanks for being here and doing that challenge. It's going to make you better. Does anybody have any questions about anything or need me to help them with anything? All right. I'm just going to walk around for the next 5-10 minutes. If you have a question, hit me up. Don't forget to save. Make sure this is somewhere where you can work on it at home.